It is the first bye week of the season for the West Virginia Mountaineers. Can this team find a way to regroup and compete in the second half of the season? Find out on this episode of the Coal Country Podcast.
You are now entering Coal Country.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Coal Country Podcast, where we discuss everything WVU sports. I'm your host, Ian McIntyre. Joining me is Tyler Cobb, and joining us later on in the episode will be Matt Howe and Matt Lombs. So, Tyler, how are you doing, man?
Happy to be here.
I'm happy for some well-needed rest during this bye week. I don't have to stress myself out with watching West Virginia football anymore, and hopefully they can take this extra week off and actually find a way to get some competitiveness back, get some structure on the offense especially. I believe in them. I do, and we'll talk about that at the end of the segment. But what we wanted to start out discussing are the overall performances of the offense and the defense. We're going to talk about particular players, what's been good, what's been bad, and then give overall grades for the team and talk about the rest of the season. So let's hop right into it.
Starting up with our midseason awards, the offensive MVP. With an offense that has been struggling, it's kind of hard to find bright spots. Who is that bright spot thus far for you?
For me, and I think for most people who have watched all of our games thus far, I think we can agree that the one constant that we've had on this team that hasn't faltered much, I should say, because everybody's faltered, but it is Cam Vaughn. Cam Vaughn is by far our most talented receiver. He's probably one of the most talented guys on the team. He has 3 touchdowns on the year. Correct? I think 3 touchdowns. And he's looked spectacular anytime he gets the ball, besides that one bobble pass in the BYU game that caused an interception, which, Khalil, that was not on you. But, that's like the only bad thing that Cam Vaughn has done all year. And there are some other guys on the offense that maybe you can argue for the MVP, but I think it's clear that Cam Vaughn has been your most consistent bright spot on offense.
That's who I was going to go with as well. It is tough on an offense that is struggling this bad to find, a lot of positives, especially when your supposed best player before the year goes out in 2 games. On a bright side, we have found out that there is hope that Jaheim will be back definitely for fall camp next year, hopefully for spring ball this coming year. But he has been working and putting in the work so he can return as soon as possible. So that is a good news for Jaheim White. To change it up, instead of going with Cam Vaughn like you, I'm going to go with Nico Marchiol. Ironically, a guy that is no longer on the team. We only have 2 wins on the season, and he is largely responsible for one of them. He is, the Pitt Slayer. He is 2-0 when playing the majority of the minutes against Pitt, a game we probably shouldn't have won, and he found a way in overtime to get it done. So my answer is really Cam Vaughn, but because you went Cam Vaughn, and to shout out Nico a little bit more because, he did win that game for us, I'll give it to Nico.
Yeah, we'll give him his props. And like we said in our live stream we did the other day, we wish him the best and success where he chooses to go. Will always be remembered for being a great WVU quarterback in his time here. So those are our offensive MVPs. Let's go ahead and move on to the offensive biggest surprise. So my offensive biggest surprise, is it surprising? I don't know, but Khalil Wilkins is my pick here. And that is because the fact that he has had to be thrown in to a system that he was never started in and never, supposed to get adequate time in. It was supposed to be Henderson and Nico the whole year, right? So the fact that he stepped in and managed to make it only a 14-point game versus BYU, and he did have some bright spots against Utah, means that he is a pleasant surprise. And let's not forget, he's a freshman, and the fact in that BYU game, he was willing to take so many hits just to get our offense 3 or 4 yards at a time. I think that shows you where this kid's heart is at. He's willing to do anything for the result on the field. And I'm not saying he's perfect. He's made plenty of mistakes, right? He threw a couple picks against BYU. He didn't look fantastic in the pass game, but he has Cam Vaughn there to help him out. That's a good thing. And you can tell there's a lot of very, very raw potential with Khalil Wilkins. So he's my pick for biggest surprise so far.
I like that pick. He was on the list as well, but I'm actually going to go Grayson Barnes. A tight. I didn't expect the tight ends to get much usage in an offense that's very run heavy and doesn't use a whole lot of tight end in the pass game. They're more for the running game, but Grayson Barnes is outside of Cam Vaughn, the second leading receiver. He's got 13 catches for 132 yards on the season. He has the touchdown that sent the game into overtime against Pitt. And so, he's been the guy that he reminds me of the Cole Taylor in a sense for Garrett Green is when you have a struggling quarterback room, you just need a guy that you're confident you can go to, a big body that if you throw the ball their way, they're going to catch the ball, and that's what Grayson Barnes has been thus far. He's also done an okay job in the blocking game when need be. So I'm going to go Grayson Barnes. Simply because he has surprised me in what he's been able to do in the pass game, along with the blocking and run game.
Yeah, I like Grayson Barnes. That's a good pick. He's one of our other consistent guys on offense, so solid pick there. All right, that's our offensive biggest surprise, and now we're going to move on to the biggest disappointment on offense. Which, if you look at the entire team, that's one thing that you can make a case for. It's just the
Whole
offense as a
offense.
whole. Yeah, the entire offense. There are a few guys that I considered for this. And I don't remember exactly what I told you before recording, but I'm actually going to go with Jalen Henderson here. There's a lot of argument that you can make that he hasn't been given the chances that he should have. And I think to a certain extent, I can agree with you on that. He hasn't had enough time to show what he is truly capable of. However, in the times that he was in there, he did look a little flustered and was disappointing in the pass game from not really a perspective of accuracy, but from a perspective of how the system worked and how he didn't exactly know when his receivers were going to be open or how they were going to be open. You could tell he probably had a little bit of a harder time reading the defense in the pass game. And a lot of the time, the O line is a huge area of disappointment. And Walter Youngbear was another guy that I really was considering for this because of the hype that he got transferring here. But these guys can definitely turn around. I hope Henderson turns it around if he gets back from his injury and he gets another chance to go in there. If he does, I fully believe that these guys can, have a little bit more success going on in the rest of the season. But besides Walter Youngbear, who is my other pick, I'm going to go Henderson because I expected a little bit more out of him from transferring from a place like A&M. So I expected a little more out of him. I know it's a hard system. You don't have the best O-line, but I chose Henderson.
The O line definitely needs a little bit of a mention, as you said. I did not go with anybody on the O line specifically because the expectation going into the season was that the O line was probably going to be the weakest part of the team. That's five guys that need to have good chemistry and a lot of snaps together to have some good abilities to run block and pass block and get used to each other's games. And so I thought, we could have expected that the O-line would have some struggles. They've been a lot worse than I expected. However, I'm going to do a little bit of a cop out and just say the quarterback room as a whole is the biggest disappointment. I know you said Henderson, but I'm going to go the quarterback as a whole. We've seen 5 different quarterbacks. Not a single one of them has more touchdowns than interceptions. The closest is either Max Brown with no touchdowns and no interceptions, or Nico with 2 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. Khalil and Scotty both have 1 and 2, and then I don't think we've seen anybody else. Nico Henderson, Scotty, Khalil, Max Brown. So, it just has been a fluster. Nico sits takes his time sitting behind Garrett, waiting for the offense to become his, and he finally has his time. And I don't want to blame Nico because, like I've said, I expect him to look much better in a system that does fit him behind an O-line that can keep him protected in the pocket. But this O-line was not for him. He struggled in it a lot. I thought he was okay when he actually had time to pass the ball, but just did not live up to the expectation in Mountaineer country that I think we all held for him. And again, that's not entirely on him. That falls a lot on the O-line and just the system not fit for him. Henderson, as you mentioned, he's coming from a place like A&M. He had a couple solid games at A&M. If you go watch his games against LSU in Death Valley and then against Mississippi State, you watch those tapes and it's like, where did that go? Right? Because we saw him in one game and it was nothing like what we saw against LSU and Mississippi State in 2023. And so that's obviously, where did that go? And then Scotty and Khalil, they're young, so I don't want to put too much expectations on them, but the quarterback room as a whole has been faltering, and so the next man's got to be ready to step up. And I thought Khalil did okay against BYU. He showed promise, like you said. They've both got a lot to work out, but they both showed some promise. But they've also showed some areas of weakness. And so, just the quarterback room as a whole, you need good quarterback play to win football games, and we have not had that outside of Nico's second half performance against Pitt.
Yeah, the quarterback consistency, it has not been a phrase that we've been able to utter this season.
Yeah.
So I get why you would choose the entire quarterback room, and I like the Henderson shout out in there too. So we talked about some positives, we talked about some negatives. Let's go ahead and give our overall offensive grade on West Virginia thus far. It's not hard to say they've been disappointing. And from a letter grade perspective, I don't think I can give them a C because C is middle ground for me. So I think I would go just D, not D plus, not D minus, just D. The reason I give them D is because while they have not looked great in the conference games this far, Pitt, they found a way to get it done. And with Khalil in the BYU game, it wasn't fantastic, but there were flashes there that you could tell they had been working on something. So if you're trying your hardest, but it just ain't happening, you deserve a little bit of credit. So I'm gonna go D.
I tell you what, I want to give it an F, but I'm going to go D minus as well. The Pitt game is boosting it a little bit. Obviously, the Robert Morris game is boosting it a little bit, and then what you found a way to put 24 on BYU somehow, and so that is boosting it a little bit as well. I think if you're going F, it would be, Iowa offense in their worst year, basically. So I'm going to go D, like D minus, not any higher. I don't think you've warranted a D plus or even a C minus or anything like that because, like you said, C is average. They have been way below average. And so I'm giving it the D minus because, like you said, we've seen some flashes. When you find a way to get Cam Vaughn the ball, most of the time he makes a play, minus the interception against BYU that he fumbled into their hands. When Ty Edwards is on the field, he finds a way to get yards. And then we've seen some other bright spots as well, whether that be Scotty or Grayson Barnes, as we alluded to earlier. I'll give it a D minus. I'm hoping, Rich Rod teams typically seem to get better in the second half of the season. Last year, Jacksonville State started off 0-3 and then finished the season 9-0, not including it was either I think they won 8 straight and then lost again. But for some reason I wanted to say 9, and that could be the case. I'd have to look that one up. But I know they started the season 0-3 and then won several straight. I don't expect that out of us, but I can see the offense finding a little bit of momentum, especially if Khalil or Scotty gets themselves into a rhythm and gets comfortable in the system that they're learning. I'll give them a D minus out of optimism and hope moving forward.
All right, Matt, that's solid. So offense hasn't been great, but we can build on something. The potential is there. We have to believe the potential is
I
there.
hope so.
So, all right, let's move on to the defense. Just like the offense, we're going to do the same thing for the defense, starting with our defensive MVP. And I think also it comes to no surprise as anyone who's really, really paid attention to this defense. My defensive MVP is Fred Perry. He has emerged as one of the brightest leaders on our defense. You watch him in the BYU game force some turnovers, some very important turnovers to produce us some points, some easy points. And he's not innocent in missing tackles, but he's good at reading quarterbacks and he's good at making the tackle. So Fred Perry is my defensive MVP. I'll just keep it short and sweet and leave it there. Fred Perry.
Yeah, I don't think this one's close. There's maybe an argument for a guy or two on the offensive side of the ball, but I think Fred Perry's been the best person on defense all year long, and he showed it in BYU in a game that West Virginia struggled on both sides of the ball, especially on defense and giving up deep balls. He found a way to force turnovers. He had 2 forced fumbles in that game, and that gave West Virginia the little bit of chance that they had against BYU. He's the leading tackler on the team by far. He's got 43 total tackles. The next closest is Darren Lewis at 36. But then you look at solo tackles, he's got 28, and Darren Lewis only has 18. So it's Fred Perry to me, and I don't think it's close. He's done a good job just kind of causing havoc, which is the only thing that's given this defense a chance thus far is their ability to force turnovers. We've seen interceptions and we've seen fumbles in every game we've played this year. And so I'm going to give it to Fred Perry. He's a bright spot on the defense. He's the going to be the pillar that moving forward that you kind of have to hold on to and look to him as for some leadership, trying to find a rhythm on defense as well. And get that secondary fixed because it did not look good against BYU. But I'm going to go Fred Perry as well. That one's pretty simple.
Yep, pretty simple. I like it. Short and sweet. All right, so moving over to defensive biggest surprise. I'm going to keep this short and simple as well. My biggest surprise on defense is Chase Wilson. So we knew coming into this year that Reed Carrico was going to be that guy in our linebacker room, and Chase Wilson was going to come in and complement him. But I think Chase Wilson has been the perfect complement to Reed Carrico in the sense that, if Reed is struggling on reads or tackling, for example, because we've had problems tackling on this defense, Chase Wilson can pick up the slack and vice versa. Reed Carrico is a dog himself. But Chase Wilson's also a dog, and I think he has had flashes of that in this defense this season. So overall, my biggest surprise, Chase Wilson.
He's tied for leading the team in interception, I believe, with 2. So he's also reading the passing lanes. I'm going to go Curtis Jones Jr. He was not somebody on my radar that I expected to get a ton of snaps, but with Jamori dealing with eligibility issues at the beginning of the year, we saw Braden Siders slide in at that bandit spot and also see Curtis Jones going in there as well. But Curtis Jones Jr. has been somebody that I thought has, I didn't expect him to get a ton of playing time. That's done pretty solid up to this point. He only has 16 total tackles, but that's coming from that bandit position. He also has a sack. To put that in comparison with the 2 other guys that are playing in that position, Braden Siders only had us 11 total tackles, and Jamori Robinson only has 2, even with considering his limited time. So I'm going to go Curtis Jones Jr. He's a younger guy that's been able to slide into that position. That's had some, obviously with Jamori dealing with those issues, had some. I can't think of the word that I'm trying to use. Anyway, I'm going to go Curtis Jones Jr. as the biggest surprise.
No, that's solid. That is very solid. All right. Moving on from biggest surprise to biggest disappointment, which I think you can see some guys that have been a disappointment in conference play. So I thought about this pretty hard whenever we first wanted to do this segment, and I think I'm going to say my biggest disappointment is Michael Coates. Now, I know in past episodes we have hyped him up, and I still think he is a good player. So I want to just say that I still think he is a very solid defensive back. But this comes off of the Utah game and the BYU game more specifically, where he just allowed way too many passes and way too many yards specifically. There was a play, I think it was an RPO play, if I'm not mistaken, where Bear just threw a slant out to Coates receiver, and dude just took off for I don't even know how many yards, but it got him in the red zone. And I think missing the reads one thing, but you had the opportunity to make the tackle before he broke out because he was quicker, and that's just one thing that just sticks in my craw. You know,
Yeah.
and it's very aggravating to watch. So I'm gonna continue to hype him up. I still think he's a very solid player, and this defense still has the potential to be strong in the Big 12. It really does. We just have to have the offense come and match this intensity sometimes. But biggest disappointment right now, Michael Coates, more specifically for the BYU game. He can be better. I know he can be better, and he probably will be better. But for now, Michael Coates for me.
He's a good player that's had a bad couple of games, right?
Yeah.
Mainly the BYU, as you mentioned, but he had a couple struggles against Utah as well. But like you mentioned, he's a good player. He'll bounce back come UCF and TCU. So I don't have any doubts that he'll be able to bounce back. My biggest disappointment is a guy that we've barely seen any of because of the eligibility issues, and that's Jamori Robinson. Now, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt a little bit because he did deal with the eligibility issues. So he wasn't there in fall camp. He didn't play for the first, 4 games, I believe. But he was touted as somebody that would be an immediate impact guy. If he was in the lineup, he would be wrecking havoc on the opposing team's offense and just causing problems in the backfield. And thus far, he has not been that. I wouldn't even go as far to say that he's been the best bandit. I almost think that like the previous player that I mentioned, Curtis Jones Jr. has done a better job of causing problems in the backfield than Jamori Robinson has. So I'm going to go Jamori Robinson. I still have faith he can pick up the slack. It could be a lack of chemistry with his teammates because, like we said, he got into the team late and got into practice late. It could just be getting back into shape. I mean, I know he was staying in shape and whatnot, but getting back into football shape, practicing with the team, getting game reps. So I still have faith he can bounce back and find a rhythm moving forward into the season. But up to this point, I have not really been impressed with the limited minutes that Jamori Robinson has had when it comes to the expectations we had of him in the preseason.
That's a fair pick. I know we had discussed in the BYU game. Jamori Robinson has not been as advertised so far. Eligibility battle is one thing, so you can give him that. But Jamori, I think, is another guy who can step it up. So yep. I think hopefully we see that in the upcoming conference games. Overall defensive grade, just like the offense, we'll give it a letter grade. They have been better than the offense, so for that reason, I'm gonna move them up a letter grade. Now, I'm gonna give them probably a C minus, and that's taking into consideration the Pitt game and the opportunities that they allowed the offense to have. 2 straight interceptions by Scotty Fox put Pitt in field goal range, and the defense was able to hold them to a field goal, and that got us back in the game in overtime. So the Pitt game, bright spot. Robert Moore, second half, absolutely. Ohio game, you can give him that too because the offense just couldn't do anything, and you didn't allow a score in the second half in the Ohio game. But in Big 12 play, it's just been disappointing. It really has. You went from probably a lower A tier defense to my mind to a C tier defense. And I'm probably going to give the defense a C so far. I'm leaning C minus. So, I'm teetering between those two, but I'm going to go ahead and give the defense a C for the season thus far. They can be better.
If you asked me before the second half of the Kansas game, I would have given them an A minus, maybe a B plus. But then you got into that second half of Kansas game, and it just has been rough sailing since. I'll give them a little bit of props in the BYU game. As bad as they were when it came to the secondary, how rough it was defending the deep balls that Bear Bachmeier was able to throw. You did force turnovers, and that was pretty much the only thing that kept you in the game. And especially because the turnovers were in giving you positive field position. You got one turnover on the 3-yard line and one turnover inside the red zone. And so, as bad as the secondary was that game, the defense as a whole was really the only thing that gave you a chance, but strictly because of the turnovers. So I'm going to go straight C as well. There's been flashes of where this defense can be A tier, and there's been flashes where this defense can be F tier, and so I think just balancing them out in the middle, giving them a C, is about what I view them as right now. Like the offense, I think this defense will get better as the year goes on. Zach Alley is a good, talented defensive mind, man. I mean, we've seen some struggles, but I almost put that more on the personnel that we have more than I do Zach Alley as a defensive coordinator. He has shown what he is able to do, when he has full control of the defense, and he is, full discretion over what goes on that side of the ball. He has shown, elite flashes where this defense can be one of the best in the country. It's just all the pieces have got to fall in the right place. Right now, I'll give it a C, hoping that it bounces back in the second half of the season.
Yep, absolutely. Good takes. Good takes. Solid takes.
I
All
agree.
right. We'll go ahead and discuss the remaining 6 games on the schedule and how we think we can manage. I think this bye week has the potential to work wonders for our team. Give them a rest, give them a chance to go back to the basics, work on their fundamentals, get the simple things right, and come out and implement a better overall scheme, and hopefully catch some teams off guard in the second half of the schedule. You got UCF after the bye week, and then you come back and play TCU. You play Houston, and then Arizona State,
Well,
and
Colorado at
then
home. Colorado.
Colorado. That's the one I was missing. Colorado at home, then Arizona State, then Texas Tech at home for Senior Day. So rough schedule.
Yep.
Not gonna lie. I'm going to immediately come out and say that UCF is a winnable game. I know a lot of people like to say it's a toss up, maybe not winnable for us. I think UCF is a winnable game. I also look at what happened to us in 2023 in Houston with that Hail Mary and how devastating that was. And I think some of the guys that are left over are going to take that emotion back to Houston. And that could be a surprise game on the radar for a lot of people. My personal thoughts on this are Arizona State and Texas Tech, and even maybe TCU could throw in as just losses. Texas Tech, by far the favorite to win the Big 12. Probably going to make the playoff as one of the highest rated conference champions. So I look at Texas Tech being a loss and how good Arizona State is at home. They have that little upset with Mississippi State earlier, but I still think they're just so solid of a team that they're going to have no problem handling us. So I can chalk those two up as losses. TCU, even that too. Colorado is an interesting one. You remember in the preseason, whenever you're like, I'm going to come back and, put a pin in this TCU game. Now I want to put a pin in this Colorado game. And it's going to be a very weird atmosphere depending on what we can do against UCF, for one thing, and how we look against a really strong opponent in TCU. So I could see us winning UCF and winning Colorado. So I'm gonna go ahead and say 2-4 the rest of the season, and I'm being relatively optimistic and being very optimistic. I say we beat Houston, being very optimistic. But I'm gonna go ahead and say to finish out the year, we go 2-4. We finish 4-8, underwhelming from where we thought we would finish in the preseason.
Yep.
But looking at how bad that this team has looked overall, especially in conference thus far, I think a lot of us would be very happy with 4-8.
I mean, you kind of hit the nail on the head. Where we stand right now, it almost looks as bleak as 2-10. That's hard to do, but it can be done, right? You can be very bad, right?
Florida State.
If you look at this, the beautiful thing about the Big 12 is that almost any game is winnable. And when you consider playing at home in Milan Puskar Stadium, there's only about 2 or 3 teams that I would not give us a chance against in terms of we could potentially win that game. And in terms of, Big 12, Texas Tech, Arizona State are 2 of those teams. Arizona State on the road, you know, you would need a miracle and a half to find a way to win that one. And then Texas Tech, even though it is at home, have looked absolutely dominant. They put pedal to the metal against a Utah team that just kind of whooped us, right? And so I'm going to go ahead and chalk those 2 up as losses. But the other 4, I'm going to go ahead and say this is probably a little bit controversial, as rough as we've looked. The other 4 are winnable. UCF, Houston, I think talent-wise we match up okay, not great. I do still think that Houston especially has the talent leg up on us. UCF, I think we match up okay. The only difference is it's on the road. But those 2 I think are winnable. If you look at how Colorado has played this year, and then consider the fact that it's at home, I think that's winnable. And so then it comes down to the TCU game. For whatever reason, the TCU West Virginia series is competitive. It's always close. It finds a way to come down to the wire every time. And again, considering it's at home, it's going to be tough. If you want to find a way to win that one, it would be tough. But you could. I could see a world where it happens. That if Khalil finds his rhythm during the bye week and then facing off against UCF and gets into a rhythm, Ty Edwards makes his makes a full return after having a week off. I could see it happening. And so that gives, in my mind, that's 4 winnable games. So best case scenario, and this is extremely optimistic, like very, very little chance of this ever happening, is you find a way to a bowl game and go forward to in the back half of the season. As for what I think happens is that you stole my record prediction and the games that we find a way to win, and that's UCF and Colorado. UCF, like I said, talent-wise, very similar in my opinion. I think it's very similar. And so the difference is that it is their home court. It's their home field. But West Virginia plays UCF well. It's not really been close games the past 2 years that we've played them. So I'm going to go ahead and say that West Virginia finds a way on the road. And then you get Colorado at home, who, despite some flashes like West Virginia, has also showed their struggles. And a defeated Colorado team that has to go on the road to a Morgantown team fighting for wins, just trying to find some form of good moving forward. Maybe they can find a way. And so I'm going to go 2 and 4 in the back half as well. TCU is just going to be tough. Josh Hoover has still looked really good. And then you have to go on the road against a Houston team that has looked much improved from the last 2 years. Going to be tough. Like I said, they're winnable. It's the Big 12, but it's going to be tough. And so I'll go UCF and Colorado. Be a little optimistic and like you say, 4-8, very below expectations that we had coming into the season. I had 7-5 going into the season. You had 8-4, I believe.
Yeah, I had 8-4. How do you think I feel now, man?
That's overinflated expectations towards our biased team, but I'm 4-8 at this point in the season. What we've looked like moving forward, I would be happy with. So I'm going to go UCF and Colorado. You find a way to finish the season 4-8.
All right, yeah, so we're both in agreement. And one note on that Colorado game, I have season tickets to these games. There were 2 games that I had to find alternate ways of parking, and that was Pitt and Colorado. Colorado is going to be a game where I have to go off the grid to figure out where to park because I still don't know what I'm going to do for that yet. So that should tell you how many fans are going to be at this game or how many fans should be at that game. Mostly the Coach Prime hype, but that's going to be a packed house, and I think that the fans can, chug along and help our team try to find a win there.
Hope so, man. I hope we find a way to win a couple more because, like I said, 2-10 it's right there. All you got to do is just not improve. It's right there.
It's sad to say, yeah. All right. Let's go ahead and move on to the Week 7 Cold Country Top 25. We'll bring the other guys in here. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back with Matt Howe and Matt Lombs. I'll ask you guys. I asked Tyler, gentlemen, how are we doing?
I'm happy to be here.
You heard me say it,
Dude,
didn't you?
we're having a great time right now.
So we are talking about our college football week 7 top 25 lists, and what we have done is compiled an aggregate list that we will pull up shortly of all of our lists that we made individually, and this is the overall view of who we think should be where. And we'll go ahead and hop into discussions of the just misses category, because I figure that's going to be the most controversial straight out the gate. Texas is in there. I had Texas in my just misses list, which probably wasn't the smartest idea looking back. I do have some regrets making my list, and we'll talk about that too. But Texas has just not looked good, guys. Arch Manning has not looked good, not as good as we thought he would be this season.
Says the guy who put
So-
them in their list.
I'll say the biggest thing that sticks out with the just misses is Mississippi State being a miss, even though they beat Arizona State.
Agreed.
Now, I agree with this order. I will say, obviously, they have the head-to-head, but I think Arizona State is a better team, should have won that game in general, but that's also a couple weeks ago. As the teams have developed, I think Arizona State has the better resume. If any of you guys want to add on to that, but that's just kind of where I was going because I definitely agree with that.
I'd put Mississippi State above Arizona State. I did in my own list, like Ian alluded to. This is basically we all created a top 25, and then we've averaged them out. I had Mississippi State above Arizona State. Both of them were just misses for me. I can't remember who. I had USF in as 25. So they made it above Arizona State, Mississippi State. It is difficult for me to rank a team below a team they have a head-to-head over when their only losses are to two top 15 teams. Mississippi State has beaten Arizona State, and their only losses are an overtime loss to Tennessee, who we have collectively ranked as 11th, and A&M, who we have collectively ranked as number 2, which is probably going to be another point of emphasis. Texas A&M is not second on nearly anybody's list in the country. I think I and Matt Howe were the only two to have them number 2 in our list, and Ian and Matt Lombs are a little different, but we'll get to that in a sec. Mississippi State belongs above Arizona State to me. Again, the only 2 losses they have are to top 15 teams, and they have the head-to-head over Arizona State. Arizona State has done nothing to warrant being rated over them just yet. Now, they've beaten a TCU team that has looked solid and a Baylor team that has looked okay, but they didn't go out and beat Ohio State or Ole Miss or Oregon, right? Now, neither has Mississippi State, but they did the one thing that mattered, and they beat Arizona State.
Yeah, I mean, that's a solid argument. And looking at, number 22 and 23, Nebraska and Cincinnati, Nebraska's above Cincinnati because of that head-to-head matchup, because both teams have looked very solid this year. Cincinnati beating Iowa State, and Nebraska's only loss being to Michigan. So both teams can be argued to be ranked. And again, my list is all sorts of screwed up. I wish I did it different, and hopefully in our next aggregate list, I can reflect what I want to put on here later on. But that's the same reasoning I think that you're making with Arizona State, Mississippi State, with Nebraska and Cincinnati. I think I would take Arizona State again in a rematch, but Mississippi State did what they needed to do to have a case to be above Arizona State in my mind. Same thing with Nebraska, Cincinnati.
The next thing that stands out to me is BYU being that far below Missouri and Georgia Tech. Any thoughts on that? I don't know if I'd have them above Missouri and Georgia Tech, but I'd certainly have them probably right beside each other. 5-0.
Unfortunately, being undefeated isn't quite everything. If you look at who they've played and the strength of schedule there, it's a bit disappointing compared to Missouri, and even Georgia Tech is struggling with that as well. But
I was going to say that's the biggest thing is how weak are we claiming that BYU's schedule is compared to Georgia Tech? Georgia Tech has played Colorado, Clemson, and who was the last person, and struggled with a really bad Wake Forest team, right? And so they have no ranked wins. And then BYU's biggest wins are, I
Colorado,
can't think
West Virginia.
of Colorado as
West
well.
Virginia.
Colorado as well. I can't think of the rest of their games off the top of my head.
played
They've
Stanford.
played Stanford, Colorado, East Carolina, and us.
So looking at ESPN's
I'll be
rankings, it
a
comes
little bit.
into Georgia Tech has a strength of schedule at 102 and BYU is a strength of schedule at 104, just to add context to
So
that.
right below, but BYU is 5 spots below Georgia Tech. I'd have them right beside each other. Now I have Vandy above all 3 of those undefeated teams, but I would have them above probably Virginia, a definitely 2-loss Notre Dame team. They'd be right there with Missouri and Georgia Tech. I don't think that Georgia Tech and Missouri have had that much harder of a schedule than BYU to warrant being 5 spots ahead.
I think Mizzou definitely has an SEC bias in that, we're giving them the benefit of the doubt for being an undefeated team. But looking at Georgia Tech, they actually do have a signature win, quote unquote, of the season, and that is against a very talented Clemson team. So if you look at who BYU has played, I mean, you can only play who's on your schedule, but they haven't really played anyone inspiring just yet.
I'll counter that. And if we're going to call Clemson a very talented team, we also have to call South Carolina a very talented team for the same reason. And that was preseason expectations, which shouldn't be involved in rankings halfway through the season, right? South Carolina played Missouri. Missouri won. Clemson played Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech won. We can say talented all we want, but at the end of the day, Clemson has not lived up to the expectations. Same goes for South Carolina. Now, BYU doesn't have that quote-unquote high expectation in the preseason win, but I just don't see them being that far below Missouri and Georgia Tech. I think they should be right beside them.
All right, I want to talk a little bit about Notre Dame for resume reasons. Their 2 losses were to Miami and A&M, who are number 1 and number 2 for us. So if there is such thing as a quality loss, you got 2 very quality losses for Notre Dame there. And their wins, though, they blew out Arkansas and they beat Boise State. So do those wins and losses weigh equally on the scale? And, I believe Notre Dame's talented, but they haven't proven it against very solid teams yet.
I definitely I agree with that. I think Notre Dame, by the end of the year, will find their way back into the top 10. They have a 42% chance to win out their schedule. That is, I think, by and far the highest I've seen out of the ESPN rankings right now. Yeah, I mean, they beat the hell out of everyone else, but our number 1 and number 2 teams. So, I mean, unfortunately, I think maybe, their best opportunity to really make their statement has passed. But I mean, hey, winning out is, that's just as fine as a consolation prize.
Right. And I bet their chances to make the playoff are pretty high too, considering that they will win out. At least I think we can say they will win out. Another interesting team.
Tough games left, though. They still got USC on the schedule.
Rivalry too.
Yeah, they've still got a couple challenges left.
So yeah, and Notre Dame's going to be a team to watch to see if they can win out. Virginia, obviously, very solid, upsetting Florida State and then beating Louisville in overtime. Exciting team to watch. I got to say that Virginia's offense is legit.
That was a part I wanted to talk about is how do you handle, we've talked about how the head-to-head still has to matter in a ranking like this. We talked about the Mississippi State, Arizona State situation. Obviously, Nebraska beats Cincy beats Iowa State. How do you handle that situation? What about the circle that is Virginia, Florida State, and Alabama, right? Alabama by far has the best resume. Despite that loss to Florida State, they've beaten Georgia, they've beaten Vanderbilt. And so Virginia, outside of beating Florida State, doesn't really have any, you could consider Louisville on the road a signature win. And then Florida State's signature win is, of course, Alabama. And so how do you handle a situation where Florida State's 2 losses are to the team we have ranked number 1 and the team we have ranked number 16, Alabama's loss is to said Florida State, and then Virginia's loss is to a completely out of the stratosphere unranked NC State team. And so, how do you handle that situation? Because as Matt Howe has alluded to in the past, the little circle of suck that goes on, in so to speak. One has a head-to-head over the other has a head-to-head over the other, and then one has a loss to somebody that they should not have lost to.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's
Tarleton
hard to
State
rank
Vandy.
when it doesn't make a perfect loop. We like to say circle of suck, but unless those teams loop all the way back around, that's just very uncommon. Often, and like you see here, it kind of loops and around and crosses over, goes all over the place, and doesn't even connect on either end. So really, it's more of a spider web of mediocrity.
I like that better, actually. Instead of circle of suck, it's just spider web of mediocrity. In terms of order, I think it's right. Alabama above Virginia, Virginia above Florida State. I don't know if I would have them that far separated. Notre Dame is a two-loss team, as is Florida State. Both of them to their losses to ranked teams, and they're 4 spots apart. But I could understand, arguments for Michigan, BYU, and Illinois to all be above them. Actually, the only team I believe I have above Notre Dame in my personal list is BYU. So that's tough. I think it's the right order, just a difficult situation to handle.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's hard to argue against, Virginia against Alabama here. There's a gauntlet of SEC teams in between them, and I don't know if you can make an argument for Virginia against any of those SEC teams. Maybe Vandy, but
Well, I
I don't know.
disagree with the Vandy shout, but I know that was a note you had on my list personally.
Oh yes.
Bring it up,
I
Lombs.
guess we can go into it then. So
Yeah.
Vandy on our list. So obviously this is an aggregate. So looking at everyone's rankings, I mean, obviously we can't pull them up. It's going to be difficult to, have all that there. But I'm looking at it, and Ian has Vandy at 16, Tyler has Vandy at 13, and Matt has Vandy at 11. Now I have Vandy at 22. I think you
Really
guys are
pulling us down.
way too bullish on Vandy here. Now, you want to talk about how South Carolina is a good team. They are. But when you compare Vandy to 2 teams in particular, I compare
Which are?
Vandy to Michigan. Or no, not Michigan. Arizona State. Arizona State does have a better win by all 4 ESPN metrics, by ESPN SP+, ESPN CFPI, ESPN resume, and efficiencies. And then you compare them to Illinois here, where Illinois also is better in all 4 categories. They have a better win against USC. So
Getting very
really,
analytical.
I mean, I had to look up the stats here because it just
So-
feels so wrong.
I want to note before firsthand, you mentioned ESPN FPI. It is fine to use ESPN metrics, but ESPN metrics do hold some, brand bias. Not entirely, but it's there.
Now,
and it's
how?
quite obvious sometimes.
How? Like, can you prove that, or is that just
Okay, for example, I'm trying to think of the final ESPN FBI rankings of 2024. Arizona State had won the Big 12, and they had just gone toe to toe with Texas, and yet they were nowhere to be found in like the top 20, top 15, right? And if you ask anybody on the planet, Arizona State was still a top 20, top 15 team, right? And so it is like a known fact in the college football world that ESPN FPI is vastly different from what the majority sees on the field, and what the majority would agree is, the quote unquote best teams or the quote unquote highest ranked teams. Again, like I said, it's not wrong to use ESPN analytics or and whatnot. But if you are asking me to compare Vanderbilt's win over South Carolina and Virginia Tech to Illinois' win over USC, and who is their other Power 4 win? I know they have another one. Those are very comparable in my eyes. And so then you look at the losses. Okay, well, Vanderbilt was in a competitive game, semi-competitive game up until about late in the 4th against Alabama. Meanwhile, Illinois got their socks rocked off by Indiana, right? And so you could maybe make the argument for Illinois a spot or 2 above Vanderbilt, but I would certainly not consider putting Vanderbilt that low. Especially,
Unfortunately, though, Indiana is actually considered a more of a quality loss for Illinois than Bama is for Vandy, based on those same metrics.
and that's where it comes in. Are you going to 100% believe the metrics? Is a near 50-point loss to an Indiana team the same as a semi-competitive loss against Alabama?
Yeah, I think
I
those
mean, it would
metrics are a
depend
little
on game
flawed.
flow, but yeah.
So again, very comparable in terms of the teams they've won against. Very, semi-comparable in terms of the losses, but Vanderbilt competed against an Alabama team on the road. Meanwhile, Illinois gets smacked at home by Indiana. And so I would still have Vandy above Illinois. You mentioned you had them at 22. I have them at 13. Who else do you have above them that I do not?
Let's see.
I imagine that would mean you have Notre
have-
Dame above them.
I do have Arizona State above them, purely based on their TCU win is better than Vandy's South Carolina win, although they do have a worse loss to Mississippi State. I will admit that. Let's see. BYU and Virginia, you have above. This is so difficult looking at an Excel spreadsheet.
I don't know if I would call TCU a better win than South Carolina.
I mean, all four metrics would disagree with you there, and I know we're gonna go into circles about this debate, but
yeah. Well, there's no need to go into circles. There's a reason we all four made a different list, because we all four value different things. We all four value, ESPN metrics as you've referenced differently. The way I made my list was resume first, and if the resumes were so close that I could not decide who to put first or second, then I would go into who do I think the better team is, or who do I think would win on the field. And so Illinois and Vanderbilt, if you had to ask me to compare them on the field, at this point in time, I'd give the edge to Vanderbilt as to who I would think would win.
yeah, I think this game, that hypothetical game, would be very close and closer.
No, it would be close.
Anyone would want to admit here. But I mean, that was the most glaring point to me. What else do we see?
You got on to me, and you'd have to get on to Matt Howe as well, because he had the same thing. But
he had Vandy way higher than you. He had him
Yeah,
at 11.
Vandy 11th.
well, that's not even what I was alluding to. I was going to allude next to Texas A&M.
See, this goes into, I mean, we've debated about this off camera. I don't like you and Matt call it rewarding. I call it punishing. Like, teams can only play who's on their schedule. I don't like, punishing Ohio State and putting them low. I mean, I can honestly get behind the argument for Miami at 1. Their resume is pretty much flawless at this point in time.
Yeah.
They have great wins compared to, Ohio State. So,
well, if you look at
Ohio State's only win is against Texas so far, but go ahead.
If you look at Ohio State's and A&M's records, or more specifically the teams they've beaten, right? They're both undefeated. Not in terms of who's higher ranked. Let's strictly go in terms of eye test and who we think is the better team. If you had to pick between Notre Dame and Texas right now, who would you pick on a neutral field? I would go Notre Dame.
Yeah, I'd probably go Notre Dame.
So the best win between the two teams is Texas A&M's win over Notre Dame, not to mention it was on the road. You then go into their second and third Power 4 wins, which for A&M is, either Mississippi State or Auburn. And then for Ohio State, it's Washington and Minnesota. In terms of Mississippi State and Auburn, I'd probably take Washington barely above both of them, but then I would take Auburn and Mississippi State both comfortably over Minnesota. And so it's close in terms of second and third, their second and third best win, but first, their best win on their resume is a Notre Dame win on the road or a close win at home to a Texas team that has fallen out of the top 25 completely. And so I think that warrants Texas A&M, like you mentioned, not punishing Ohio State, so to speak, but rewarding Texas for beating a top 25 team on the road, beating a Mississippi State team that has looked well above expectations, and not only beating them, but blowing them out. and then beating an Auburn team that also has looked, fairly well compared to the expectations that I had going into the season.
Anyone else want to pick it up here?
All right. I can go ahead and jump into the top 10-ish area. Like you guys were just arguing Ohio State and A&M. I get the arguments for both, right? Because what I did mistakenly with my list was take in the preseason into consideration. And I don't think that's fair to any one team on the list. So I can get behind A&M being higher than where I had them. I definitely think they're a top 5 team. And Ohio State, though, has had such a huge point differential. You take away Texas, they've had a huge point differential to every other team they've played. So it just makes that Texas loss look worse, or that Texas win look worse. You know what I mean? But other than that, Ohio State has done exactly what they've needed to do, and I think that's why I had them a little higher. But all of us seem to agree as well on where the general area of Ole Miss, Oklahoma, Oregon, like we all have them in that area. I think I had Oregon a little higher though. Did I have Oregon in my top 5, Matt?
You
I think
had
I did.
Oregon at 3. I had Oregon at 2. Both Matt and Tyler had Oregon at 7.
Okay. So,
But that's since changed for me. I have since moved Oregon to 4th.
I was gonna say, like that is something that we have to talk about. Would be like blatant
That's
disrespect of
that's
Oregon.
fine. But I did move.
Sorry, you go.
Oh, I moved Oregon to 4th. The main reason I had them that low in the first place is because their quote unquote signature win is now an unranked win against Penn State, which all the teams that I had above them had a ranked win. Indiana had blown out Illinois, Oklahoma had beaten Michigan, Ole Miss had beaten LSU, and so those 3 teams, along with A&M, I had put above them. But I have since, reconsidered the fact that the UCLA loss for Penn State was a fluke. It is still a very talented. They're still a very talented team that's having a rough stretch, and that goes for Ohio State's win against Texas as well. They're unranked, but Texas still has talent. They're a really good defense, and so I reconsidered that a little bit. Moved Ohio State and Oregon back up to 3 and 4. Ole Miss, Oklahoma, Indiana back down to 5, 6, and 7.
all right, fair enough. So, other than that, though, I like Indiana being up there. I like Alabama up there. Again, we talked a little bit about them. They look solid. Georgia below them because of that matchup, that head-to-head. And I think we've talked about the rest. So,
Regardless of order, do we all have the same top 10, just in different orders?
I'm pretty sure we do. I think I did.
I believe we all have the same
so.
top 10.
Yes,
So-
that looks like that is correct.
And
Everyone
so-
has Georgia at 10, and then everyone above that is the same.
All right.
So we all have the same top 10. We're relatively on the same basis. I think the whole point of this whole thing was to point out that the AP poll sucks, and so we made our own. Even though
I think
a little skewed.
you can really tell that the AP poll is just bad because if you look at the individual voters every week and look at their ballots, you have to question whether they watch the games. And I think the answer for some of them is no, they don't watch the games. So
You guys might be cherry picking a little bit. I mean, there are some glaring examples so far this year that we've seen of AP voters that really just kind of stick their head in the sand every weekend. But
yeah,
I mean, I certainly don't think that the AP poll is that far off of what it should be.
not this week. Not this week.
I'll be honest, it was better this week, but there's still pretty rough mistakes, right? You have Cincinnati below an Iowa State team that they beat, and they have their same record as. And I don't see an argument for that at all. I just don't see an argument for Iowa State above Cincinnati when they have the same record. They both, Cincy has the head-to-head, and both of their losses are quote-unquote quality losses, right? Nebraska is Cincy's loss. Iowa State's loss is Cincy. And so I didn't agree with that. I still think Vanderbilt's too low. They have them 20. We obviously talked about that, so I don't want to deep dive into why I think Vanderbilt is higher again. This week they did a lot better, and partially because they finally dropped Texas and Penn State, and Texas and Penn State could find their way back into the top 25. So it hasn't been as bad as it normally is this week, but it's just normally atrocious simply because it uses too much brand bias and has way too much preseason milked into it, right? They adhere too much. They feel the need to justify their preseason rankings more than have the proper rankings in the week that it is.
Yeah, I could get behind that. I mean, we've already also talked about our opinions on preseason rankings, and they really don't mean anything until I say week 3. You guys would even wager past week 6, week 7, week 8. So,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. But what else? Anything else to add, Matt?
I mean, you guys have said everything. This could radically change every time. We saw what happened with Texas. Texas is the fastest preseason number 1 to drop out of the top 25.
By
Saw what happened
7
with
weeks,
Penn
by the way.
State. Yeah, crazy. And this could change radically if the Texas Tech and Utah game had gone the other way. We'd have a completely different school in the top 10 from the Big 12. And again, I expect the Big 12 to eat itself alive a little bit. Maybe not as bad as last year, but that remains to be seen. I still am a little high on Baylor, but I don't know if they'd be able to break back in with their stumbles that they've had so far.
I'm
Not
still
to get off
counting on
topic and go into Big 12 conference talk, but I mean, I think our list is pretty solid. Obviously, we each had our own weights that we assigned to things, and I thought each of us did a pretty good job doing a deep dive and coming up with metrics that we felt really applied to ranking teams. So overall, I'm pretty happy with our list, and I guarantee after this weekend and all these games to play, this is just gonna shift dramatically.
I'm
Yeah,
telling
100%.
I'm telling you right now, Washington goes into the big house and upsets Michigan and finds their way in.
I'm telling you that Indiana goes into Oregon and beats them
Oh,
on the road.
I'll be honest. Wait, you said Indiana beats Oregon?
Oh, yeah.
I was going to say that would be a perfect transition into our next segment, but the week 7 pick'ems is not our next segment. Oh, well, we can move on anyway.
Yeah, I think that's all we have to say about the top 25 aggregate list. So let me go ahead and change everything around here, and we are going to move on to Mr. Matt Lombs' favorite segment, which is bold or brain dead. So he just spouted that phrase out in a random episode that we did with him, and we've loved it ever since. And we take takes that other people have said or takes that we have, and we sort of debate them. Is it a hot take or is it a cold take? So this is sort of what this segment is all about, and Tyler is pulling the things up now. So I will go ahead and put us back in this configuration real quick, and we can go ahead and go.
This was at Matt Howe's request, a recent change to a fellow Big 12 member's logo. Zach Cohen tweeted out, "Change is a good, natural thing in design, especially for sports logos and uniforms. But this change by Texas Tech is not good in my opinion. The new logo looks dull and naked, like it got stripped of its personality." Gentlemen, is this bold or brain dead? Does the new Texas Tech logo look stripped of its personality?
I'll jump in first since this was my contribution to this segment. I do not like the change. I am not the biggest fan of their old logo. I think it looks good. I really like that they make it 3-dimensional with the shading. There is no character in this new logo. It is flat. It is uninspiring. I honestly, it's hard to tell right now, but the collar looks a little off as well. Just in the red is different. It's just dull, and I mean the shape is the only thing that they kept, and that is the part that in the original logo is fine. But all of the good things have been stripped. It's like putting a filter over to take away all of the good detail and then squashing it flat and saying, "Oh, look how much better it is." So that's my take. I think for Texas Tech, I think this was a brain dead move.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's completely brain dead. I could get behind them using this logo maybe once or twice a year for, throwback uniforms, like how West Virginia used their throwback logo this season for one game, I believe. I don't believe we're going to bring that back. But I mean, people don't respect the bevel, man. The bevel adds so much character. Shout out to Sickos Committee. I know they love the bevel. But I agree. It just the new logo just looks soulless and it doesn't pop out at you. I genuinely, like, I don't understand how you can make this decision. I mean, they're just going with the flow of minimalistic logos, I guess, but they're about 10 years too late to that party. So what's the point, gentlemen? What is the point?
Yeah, my take is that it is a definite downgrade. Now, I don't hate the logo because I think it has its uses. Loans, like you said, it could be a throwback thing, when they throw it on some special uniforms in football and basketball. But the shading on the old logo just looks clean. It makes it pop a little bit. And I think people just got tired of looking at it, which kind of sucks. People within Texas Tech got tired of looking at it, and so they tried to change it up, and the color's different. Like Matt, you said that's a little weird to me that they made it like a lighter shade of red. And on the big T, at least, there's like nothing. There's just like no detail whatsoever. It's just a filled in red T, while the other one has a lot of character. So I think it's a downgrade. I agree that it's not a good move, but it has potential to be used in special scenarios. I just don't like that it's a permanent change.
Here's where I stand. In terms of the logo itself, I think it is a major downgrade. The bevel, like you said, adds a lot of character. The old, the throwback that they're now going back to, especially the top area of the T, just looks empty and kind of plain. However, when you put these two logos on helmets, which I'm going to pull up, I think that this right here compared to this right here, the throwback looks significantly better. I don't know what it is, but I just like the way the throwback double T looks on the black helmet. Now that is also a brighter red compared to what the throwback logo looks like in the original picture. But I like that double T on the black helmet more than I like this double T on the black helmet. And so I think that there's uses for both. I almost think that the beveled T should be your primary logo, and then the non-beveled T should be what you see on the uniforms.
I think
Fair
important
enough.
to note out on that picture, though, it's missing the black outline, which, I mean, helps the TT flow better on the helmet. But,
Are you
if
saying
you
on
were to,
this?
no,
On the new one.
on the new one, it's missing the inner outline.
Okay.
So I think if you add that in there, I think your opinion might change a little bit. But
Yeah.
glad to know that
It,
we're all on the same page at least.
yeah,
For the most
it's
part.
seamless on that black helmet. It does look better. It's seamless on that black helmet. But yeah,
And
overall a logo downgrade.
I just think this looks so clean for whatever. And I
I
love
agree.
the stars that they use on the helmet.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good.
Moving
It's very
on.
nice. Yeah, moving on to the next bolder brain dead take. Go ahead and read it,
There
Tyler.
are multiple here. We are going to focus on hot take number 1 by Daz. James Franklin needs to be fired immediately. Gentlemen, we all know what happened. I'm going to remove this banner. It's covering our faces a little bit. We all know what happened this past Saturday. UCLA pulls off a miracle against Penn State and finds a way to upset James Franklin's Nittany Lions. James Franklin has a reputation for not being able to beat top 10 teams. They are in a paradox. They will always be a top 10 team. They will always beat the teams that they are supposed to beat, but then when it comes time to beat a top 10 team, they cannot do it. However, the narrative changed this past Saturday, and they couldn't beat a bottom 10 team either. Does James Franklin need to be fired or relieved of his duties?
I'll start and I'll say it's a weird situation because his buyout is so large. I think it's $56 million is his buyout. That changes the dynamic totally from the school perspective. He has underperformed in the past against those top 10 teams, like you said. And I think that the Oregon game that they lost at home in overtime was bigger for their program than a lot of people realized it was. Whenever they lost to Oregon, everybody was like, you still got your season in front of you, still got your season in front of you. But like, what does that say whenever you lose at home in one of the best environments in college football, albeit against a really good team? That sort of proves that if you do make it into the playoff, you're just going to struggle. And with the exception of Boise State last year, they did struggle in the playoff. So, it was another feeling of dread for Penn State fans when they lost to Oregon. And then to top it all off, you get beat by an interim coach and a former player calling the shots for his first ever time beats Penn State. So from a James Franklin perspective, it is horrible. And I love his 1-0 mentality where he always tweets out like, "Come on, Nittany Lions fans, we're going 1-0 this week." Well, you went 0-1 against UCLA. So I don't know if I would stick with him long term or not. I think at least for this year and maybe next year as well, you got to roll with him just because that buyout is so large. I'm not exactly sure what it shrinks down to in the coming years, but man, you committed to him. This is what you asked for. This is what you asked for. So I think I would not get rid of him right now because it's also another thing in this era of college football with recruiting. Like James Franklin's a solid recruiter. He's a really solid recruiter, and he's good at keeping guys on the roster and returning production. Was a huge conversation about Penn State this year. I don't think you get rid of him immediately. That's my take. It's not exactly a brain dead take because I would be tempted. I really would, but I wouldn't get rid of him this year. Not yet. Now, hopefully that was a fluke game, but who knows?
I mean, I can go next. Yeah, I'm in the same vein as you. I think that it'd be quite foolish to fire him immediately, given his buyout. I mean, I'm 99% sure the Penn State boosters could handle that. They could handle that, probably no sweat. But that being said, I don't think there's anyone else that puts Penn State in the best position to win the upcoming games. Like I think that getting rid of James Franklin really just kneecaps the rest of your season. And I mean, I know losing to UCLA is awful, and I know we literally just got done saying this, but they really do have the rest of their season ahead of them, and they need to make sure they win out to even have a look at the playoffs. I mean, I at this point, even if they do win out, it'd be a little bit tough to probably put him in, but still, like, getting rid of him now would definitely be a mistake in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's really earned that title of the guy who can't win the big games. I'm reading that he's 4-21 against top 10 opponents, and he has a losing record against any ranked opponents. But he's a very highly touted head coach. He has a very solid 104-43 overall wins. And if the goal at Penn State, and I think this is pretty obvious, is to be able to compete at least for the Big Ten title every year, or at least get very close to it, and obviously to compete in the national championship as often as possible, I would be surprised if you could point at very many other coaches. Like, there are very few coaches who are consistently at that level every year, and they're not always there. I think Penn State is not consistently elite, but very consistently close to elite. I don't think you would want to get rid of a bad thing. Now, if this is the beginning of the end, and they go 3-9 next year, I'd cut it next year. But I wouldn't even think that is something practical you could even consider at this point.
Penn State standards are not West Virginia standards. If a West Virginia head coach can get fired for going 6-6 in the regular season after coming off of a 9-4 year where you were in the race for a Big 12 championship, it's going to take a lot less to get a guy fired that the expectation is national championships. Do I think it is, quote unquote, brain dead to fire him right now? Yes. Right now is not the time, especially when you consider that buyout and the rest of the season is in front of you to make the playoffs. I don't know if a 9-3 Penn State team makes the playoffs with that loss to UCLA, unless UCLA just turns it around and manages to go 8-4, right? But I don't see a 9-3 Penn State team getting to the playoffs, and so you've got to win out. You can't lose again, and that includes beating Ohio State and Indiana. If you can find a way to win those two games, if you're James Franklin, you've earned your spot to keep going, right? Because you're proving everybody wrong. You can beat the top 10 teams. But if you lose to even one of those teams, I would say that it's not brain dead. It's bold, but I would say that it's not brain dead to fire him at the end of the season if he misses the playoffs at 9
That's
and 3.
fair.
Because, like I said, the expectation at Penn State is national championships, and he's just unable to win the big games. Even he made it to the semifinals last year. Even the teams that he beat, SMU at home and Boise State. You beat a team that most considered shouldn't even have made the playoffs and a G5 team, right? And so I would say his seat is very hot, not in terms of getting fired midseason, but I would say it's very hot in terms of if you don't turn it up right now and find a way to get to the playoffs, you might be feeling it in late November, early December.
Yep. Very fair. All right. That's all of our
That's-
opinions. Let's move on to the last one.
Last one, like the last one we did, this one has multiple. I want to focus on one. Texas Tech 12-0 talk. We talked about Texas Tech in our first one about their new logo. Let's talk about the talent that they have and the promise they have shown through 5 games.
All right. You go ahead and start. I'm pulling up their schedule, so I'm going to look at it.
I've seen it, and this is genuine. It's the Big 12, so anything can happen. But if you had to ask me, I would honestly be shocked if they didn't go 12-0. Right? They've faced the hardest team on their schedule, which was Utah. They have Arizona State left. You could argue that that's maybe a little harder than Utah, but that's certainly winnable. And so at the very least, they go 10-2, 11-1. I don't see them losing. I don't even see them losing 2 games. Kansas at home, Arizona State on the road, Oklahoma State at home, Kansas State on the road, BYU at home, UCF at home, and then West Virginia on the road. So you've only got, 2 more games on there that you would probably consider losable, and that's Arizona State and BYU. But BYU you get at home. Arizona State has shown some weaknesses. I wouldn't be surprised. And if Texas Tech is 12-0 come November when college football playoff rankings are coming out and we're talking about the playoffs, that's top 4 team right there. So I'm going to say that this is bold, not brain dead. It is very possible Texas Tech finds their way to 12-0.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I wouldn't even say it's like that bold of a take. It's a good take because there's not much more to piggyback off of from what you said. Their schedule is what it is. They play Arizona State at Arizona State and they play BYU, but they host BYU at home. And they got Kansas. They play Kansas State at Kansas State, and they host UCF. I think West Virginia has the opportunity to do the funniest thing ever.
They're 11-1 and march into Morgantown. It would be so amazing.
That'd be hilarious. But yeah, I don't even think it's like that bold of a take to make. I think that it is a very, very real possibility because Texas Tech is loaded too.
I want to say that the reason it is quote unquote bold is because of the chaotic nature of the Big 12. The last team to go 12-0 in the regular season in the Big 12 was TCU in 2022, and we all know how good that TCU team was. So can Texas Tech live up to those expectations that TCU in 2022 set? Upset Michigan in the semifinals and then get blown out by Georgia in the Natty. But either way, I think it's possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. It's not bold. It's not brain dead. It's objectively correct. They will win out. The hardest game left on their schedule is BYU, and when you compare
Oh
BYU's
no, I'd say
schedule,
Arizona State is still the harder team, especially on the road.
Yeah,
yeah, all
maybe
right,
just because
that's
it's a
fair. That's fair. But comparing that to BYU's schedule, when BYU still has to play at Arizona, that shouldn't be that difficult, but it could prove to be a headache. They have to play Utah in the Holy War. They're playing at Iowa State, at Texas Tech. They do have TCU at home, but still a very strong team. They're at Cincinnati. The only,
Brutal
slam
stretch
dunk
for
win
BYU.
that is absolutely brutal, and it would not surprise me at all to see them fall way out of the top 25 when that's all done.
Brutal stretch for BYU. Semi easy stretch for Texas Tech. I'm going bold.
Yeah,
Or
I saw.
good.
I don't know if it was their official X account, but Texas Tech or one of their fans had posted their schedule, the back half of the schedule, and said the test starts now, and all the comments were like, fill in the blank, like C blank T cat, like this is not going to be the hardest test we've seen at all this year, and just given the quality of this Texas Tech team this year, this might be the easiest schedule just in Power Four even.
Yeah,
I mean,
That
could
does it
this
for
could this
the
prove to
for the
hurt
Rangers.
them though? When it comes down to seeding, as
That was my
like
oh
they would have played nobody, so it's going to be really hard to stack them up. It's really just going to be hypothetical matchups when it comes to seeding them.
that
Well, and
was
the SEC always wins hypothetical matchups, but Texas Tech's a solid team. And the thing you have to consider when you play nobodies is how well you actually do against them.
and
Uh,
they've done excellent so far.
exactly. I pointed Ohio State beating Grambling State. I watched that whole game. It was fantastic. I saw a bunch of the Ohio State people saying, "Oh my gosh, their band was fantastic," which is always great to hear because I think Ohio State's band, No Hate, is a little overhyped. It's just
Agreed.
marching band, but that's just my opinion. I'm getting off topic, but you have to go and beat the crap out of teams that are worse than you. That's what really shows and sets you aside that yes, you are confirming yourself as a very high quality team. If you go and play Oklahoma State at home as a Texas Tech and it's a close game, that is not a, even if it's a win, I think that goes in the loss category. And that's really my opinion on even if their schedule should be easy, that it's only that way because they're such a high quality team and they should win very big. But that remains to be seen. Like you said, Big 12 is very chaotic. They might drop two, even three of them. It just depends.
I was gonna bring up the fact that the easier schedule could play as a negative factor when it comes to the playoffs for Texas Tech, not in terms of seeding. It's gonna be there's not going to be very many teams, if any, to go undefeated into the playoffs, right? Oregon was the only team to do it last year. And so if Texas Tech manages to find their way to the playoffs 12-0, 13-0, presuming they win the Big 12 championship game, um, they'll be right there in the top four, without a doubt, even if it is, quote unquote, weaker schedule. My concern with them is how the weaker schedule will play into how they perform against tougher opponents. If you've been beating up on West Virginia, for example, the past couple weeks of your regular season, and then all of a sudden you march into a playoff game against Alabama, you're not, accustomed to playing that caliber of team. And so I think it could hurt them on that front in terms of having a weaker schedule leading up to the playoffs if they do find a way to go 12-0, 13-0 into that first round, or technically second round because they would get a bye.
yeah, it makes sense. So, is that it for Boulder Brain Dead?
I believe so.
All right, good takes by everybody. We seem to agree on everything, so that's a first. All right, with Boulder Brain Dead out of the way, we're going to go ahead and move on to our final segment, which is the pick'ems for Week 7. So, Tyler, you got the list pulled up. Let's go ahead and just go through them, give a short opinion, and we'll pick who we think's going to win.
Starting off with our first G5 on G5 pick of the year. Friday Night Lights has South Florida going to North Texas in what could be a major game in the American Conference title race. Who do you guys have?
I'm going to go ahead and start. I have USF. This is a very important game for USF. They have to prove that they're a legit G5 contender for the playoff. This is a game to do it. Both offenses are electric. It's going to be at North Texas, though, and they have canceled class for this game. So I expect it to be pretty electric down there. But I got USF. I think they can be a legit contender for the playoffs.
Tyler, you want to go first?
Well, I always go last, man.
Well, so we kind of talked about this before, and originally I said South Florida. They've had a fantastic year so far, but I don't know. Something makes me want to go with the Mean Green.
Ross Hodge.
The Ren Baker effect.
Yeah, maybe.
Oh yeah, I guess I'll go. I'm taking USF. I mean, this. I mean, it's not as obvious as I feel it is. I mean, this is going to be probably a very close game. It's going to come down to be, probably 7-8 points, maybe. Definitely one score, but I think USF has proven to me that they could contend in the Power Four this year. I mean, I don't know what exactly UNT has proved yet. I mean, I know it's going to be at UNT, but I still feel comfortable enough to take USF here.
Let me tell y'all about somebody known as Drew Mestamaker, if I'm pronouncing his last name right. Down in North Texas, or I guess up in North Texas, the Mean Green pull off the upset against Byron Brown, Alex Golish, and the South Florida Bulls and find a way to end what would, I'm going to say end, because if USF loses this game, I don't see a way they make it to the playoff as a 2-loss G5 team. So I'm going to say North Texas ends the playoff hopes for South Florida. I'm going to go with the Mean Green as well. Ohio State travels to Illinois. Ohio State still undefeated. Illinois coming off of a win against USC, I believe. Who do you have?
This is an interesting game because Illinois has upset Ohio State before. Like Illinois has always been a thorn in the back of Ohio State and Michigan in the Big Ten. It's been weird. But I think Ohio State has done what they have needed to do so far this season. And I think they continue that trend against Illinois. Illinois coming off a good win against USC, like you said. But I think the dominant fashion that Ohio State just beat Minnesota and is going to carry over in this game. It could be close, but I got the Buckeyes.
I think this should be a solid game. I don't know that it should be a blowout. If you're Ohio State and you saw what Indiana did to this team, you really should go out and go crazy. I feel like they've played very reservedly offensively. They've been extremely well coached on defense. I just think Ohio State takes it across the board.
Yeah, I have to agree. I mean, I know Illinois has won the last 4 matchups against Ohio State, but I mean, that was then. This is now. Ohio
Yes.
State definitely. Yeah, is that a Boulder Brain Dead take? But Ohio State should. I mean, it might be close at halftime, but they should be running away with it by the fourth quarter. Give me the Buckeyes.
Ohio State was a little slow to start the season. They found their rhythm the past 2 weeks against Washington and Minnesota. I'm going to go with the Buckeyes. Talent wins. Give me Ohio State. Bama travels to Missouri. 2 teams that have looked very solid up to this point. Can Missouri pull off the upset at home, or will Bama continue the winning streak against ranked opponents?
Well, you know what? You want to talk about a close game. This is going to be a close game. Like you said, 2 very solid teams in the SEC battling for their spot in that conference. I'm personally going to pick Bama here. I think Ty Simpson has looked like one of the best quarterbacks in college football. I think he can get the job done on the road and continue Bama's quest for another national title. But I think Missouri may cover the spread here, and it's a small spread. And I would not be surprised if they won. But I'm going to take Bama.
Yeah, this is another one of those games that should be a very good watch. I like what Alabama has done. Obviously, they lost their first game of the season to FSU, but they've looked better and have improved game by game. Something is telling me Bo Prabula and Missouri are going to win this game. I don't know what it is. I keep seeing him on all the Heisman lists. I've watched some clips of him, and he just looks super solid. They have just a solid all-around team this year. I was not high on them preseason, but they have just exceeded all expectations so far. So I like the upset here.
I'm gonna roll with Bama, and I just think Bama is more talented than Mizzou. I mean, I know Mizzou has a very humming offense. Really, I mean, I just think Mizzou gets, to put it bluntly, kind of flashbanged by Alabama's sheer talent on both sides of the ball in the first half. So, I mean, they're very talented on offense, so they could definitely bring it back, and I do think it will be close by the fourth quarter, but I still think Bama edges them out.
I love Bo Prabula, and I feel like at this point in the season, it's very clear that he was the quarterback that Penn State should have kept. But I'm with Lombs and Ian. I think Bama finds a way, even on the road, against this Missouri team. So I'm going to go Alabama, keeps the win streak against ranked opponents going. Moving on, probably the game of the week, the second game of the week. Indiana travels to Oregon, Eugene, to play in Autzen Stadium. Should be a good matchup. An undefeated team will lose their streak. Who will it be?
I'm going to pick Oregon here. Now, both of these teams have a lot to prove because that Oregon win over Penn State doesn't mean as much now, does it? Now that Penn State's out of the basically out of the playoff race. So Oregon is going to have to come out and try to get another statement win to prove that they are the top of the Big Ten. But Indiana also, I love Kurt Signetti. He's going to have something to fight for in this game too. Try to break into that top 5 ranking and prove that you can contend to win the Big Ten championship. However, Oregon's home field advantage, I feel like that comes into play. And the Oregon offense has been fantastic. As with the Indiana offense, this could be a shootout. I would love it to be a shootout. But I think Oregon probably has this one. But again, just like I said with Bama, Missouri, wouldn't be surprised if Indiana somehow found a way. I really wouldn't. But give me the Ducks.
I'm going to go with the upset again. Fernando Mendoza for Indiana has looked fantastic this season. I'm now seeing him towards the top of a lot of Heisman candidate lists. It's going to be a tough game, but if they can have even a sliver of what they did against Illinois, I just don't know if Oregon will be able to keep up.
That's a crazy statement. Matt Lombs.
Yeah, I'm in the same vein here. I think the Mendoza brothers are super talented. Fernando Mendoza is going to be slinging the ball on Saturday. 16 touchdowns, 1 interception. I mean, comparable to Dante Moore, I believe, who is 14-1 for touchdowns and interceptions. But I just think that Indiana finds a way. I think that they're going to do it. So give me the Hoosiers.
I wasn't expecting that from Matt Lombs. He's normally a chalky picker. He picks who. He might be a ball knower. He typically picks who is favored, and most of the time it goes his way. But I wasn't expecting that out of Lombs. I'm going to go with Ian and say that Oregon pulls it off. I love Indiana. I love what Kurt Signetti has been able to do there, and I think they're going to continue to win. But this one's just going to be a tough road environment to play in against an Oregon team that's playing really well. And an interesting stat for you, if you didn't know, I don't know the exact record, but it is since the major realignment happened in 2023, Texas, Oklahoma go to the SEC, Oregon, Washington, UCLA, USC go to the Big Ten, and Stanford, Cal go to the ACC. Teams that have had to travel 2 time zones or more over have an extraordinarily low winning percentage rate. And so I don't like the fact that it's an Indiana team that's traveling all the way over to the West Coast to play an Oregon team that's playing really well. So I'm gonna rock with Oregon and say they keep it going. Oklahoma at Texas. Will Mateer be ready to go? And can Arch bounce back, because he did not look good in that game last week against Florida?
The Red River. The Red River. This is such a toss up. It really is. Like, this is more of a toss up for me than Indiana, Oregon. Just because of the pure rivalry hatred that flows in this game. And Arch is going to come out and he's going to be pissed. He's going to want to prove that he belongs in good quarterback conversation. But I think Oklahoma has just proven that they are one of the best all around teams in college football. And I think they're way more well rounded than Texas has proven to be thus far. And I'm going to pick Oklahoma for that reason. But, I said to you guys earlier, I think Texas could win. And I truly do. If they come out and play with enough heart, they could win it. But I think Oklahoma's just a better all around team. So I'm going to take Oklahoma for now. And maybe Texas makes me eat my words. I don't know.
So I'm going to go with Ian here. I think the Sooners have this. The question is it going to be a Red River or a bloodbath? Will Texas show up and play like they haven't played this season, or is Oklahoma just going to walk all over them? And that question isn't even predicated on the fact that John Mateer may or may not be present in this game. It's only 17 days after his hand surgery, which is a really quick turnaround, I think, even though it obviously wasn't a super major surgery. But even without him, Texas just has looked like they're on the wrong foot at every step of the game the entire time. Obviously, it's not like they're 0-5 or anything. And I'm sure that if you stack them up against every college football team this year, they're on the upper half. But they just have not played well enough so far to show me that they can beat a top 5 team.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think Oklahoma wins. I think they win by, about 2 scores here. I don't think that Arch can put it all together. I think that we might have, put too much dip on his chip. I think he's going to struggle against Oklahoma. I mean, I guess this will all be dependent on how Mateer looks coming off of his injury, but I think regardless, I think Oklahoma's going to win.
It is going to come down to whether or not Moneyline Mateer is ready to go against Texas. But even if he's not, and even if Texas hasn't looked sharp, we've seen firsthand that rivalries can go either way, no matter how good or bad a team is. Right? Nobody expected this West Virginia team to pull off a win against a Pitt team that has a really solid defensive line and linebacker core, and we managed to pull it off. So maybe Texas can find a way against a team that has looked significantly better than them up to this point. Either way, I'm going with Moneyline Mateer, especially if he's playing. Give me the Sooners. Florida, the team that just beat the Longhorns, travels to the other major Texas brand in Texas A&M to take on an undefeated A&M team. Who do we have?
This is pretty short for me. Give me A&M. They're at home, 12th man. I know Georgia's coming off that win against Texas, which somehow I called. I don't know how they pulled that off, but Florida still has the potential to be very talented. So can they compete in this game? Yes, I think they can, but will they? I don't know. I think A&M has a significant experience advantage here as well. So give me the Aggies.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Give me the Aggies. Short and sweet.
Yeah, they're going to be calling for Billy Napier's head again after this weekend. Give me the Aggies.
Gig 'em. Go A&M.
All right.
Georgia travels to Auburn. Is it Jordan O'Hare? Am I saying, is that right?
Georgia and Auburn.
No, I'm saying Auburn Stadium. Sorry, that was a total brain
Wow.
malfunction. I think it's Jordan O'Hare, something like that.
Yes.
Anyway, Jordan goes to
At
Auburn.
Yeah.
Mysterious, magical things happen at Auburn, so anything could go happen. But Georgia's looked really solid up to this point. So Georgia or Auburn, Ian.
This is going to be another short and sweet thing for me. Give me Georgia. I think they're just the better team. Jackson Arnold will have something to prove against this team, I think. But give me the Bulldogs.
Callback to an inside debate. Auburn fans, do not be disappointed when you lose to a Georgia team by 2 scores, because this is what you're supposed to do. Georgia is that much better than you. Give me the dogs.
I'm looking at this one, and I think on paper, Georgia's the better team. So I'm going to pick Georgia. However, don't be surprised if this upset happens because Auburn has looked better this year than anyone has expected. They were a 1-score game with Oklahoma and a 1-score game with A&M. This is very high on the upset watch meter for me.
We forgot to go over the records to start out with. I currently sit 4 games behind Matt and 6 games behind Ian, and I've got to make up some ground somehow. Magic happens, and Jordan Hare. Give me the Auburn Tigers, man. They're going to find a way. They have not found a way against Georgia since in a very long time. If they're going to beat a Georgia team, this is the team to beat. They find a way against the Bulldogs. Give me Auburn. Michigan travels to USC. Who do we have?
You were mentioning earlier about how East Coast teams that travel to the West Coast have a bad losing record, and Illinois went to USC and beat them in the Coliseum, and I don't see how that happens with Michigan. I'm not going to lie. I thought that Michigan was a heavily favored team in my mind, at least against USC on a neutral field. But when you think that Michigan has to make that trip out there to play USC, and they're already going to be mad that they let Illinois do this, do the same thing to them, they're going to come out with a little extra hard edge to them. So give me USC in this matchup. I've changed my mind on this.
Somebody's got to have it. Our team doesn't.
I'm going to go with Ian again here. I think USC is having a much better year than they have in a little while. And Michigan is still kind of building back up to the juggernaut they used to be. So I think it'll go to USC.
So I just had a change of heart. I originally picked Michigan, but USC just has such a great offense that I don't know if people are talking about enough.
Yep.
And I think that they might wind up blowing this game apart. So I'm going to take the Trojans.
I'm going to rock with USC as well. Try to find a way to bounce back. Just give me USC. South Carolina. Ironically, I have South Carolina at USC for some reason. It should be LSU. So South Carolina travels to LSU. Who do we have in that game?
This is an interesting one, and I think this is where I deviate from my my normal path of the better team wins. But I think South Carolina is fishing for something, and LSU is bait, man. LSU, their offense has been weird. It's had good flashes and stagnant flashes, and I think South Carolina and Lenora Sellers can do something against LSU. Now, LSU has a tremendous defense, so they're going to have to overcome that. But I'm going to take the Gamecocks here. Give me South Carolina on the road.
Do it. You know you want to.
I
give me a way to make up picks.
I don't think by any stretch LSU is a bad team. Don't get me wrong. But South Carolina is like right under greatness. They looked really solid last year, couldn't quite get there. They're having some struggles this year. Is this the game where they step up and take down a juggernaut? I think maybe. Give me the Gamecocks.
Yes.
I hate to do it to you guys, but I'm going to take LSU. I do not think it's South Carolina's time. That's either going to come against Oklahoma or Alabama because they're going to have the better team on their turf. I don't think they get it done on the road this weekend. Give me LSU.
That's exactly what I was thinking. I need some room for y'all to make up on the records for our pick'ems, and I think y'all gave me one there. LSU, in my opinion, is the better team, and they're at home. Death Valley is one of the toughest places to play. I'm going to go with LSU pretty comfortably. Last game of the week, we are picking. Sadly, there is no West Virginia football this week, or maybe that's a good thing because it's just pain to watch our team get blown out every week anyway. Arizona State travels to Utah, two teams fighting for probably the number 2 spot in Big 12 power rankings, so to speak. Will the Sun Devils get it done, or will the Utes find a way?
So, like you said, this is a super important game for the Big 12 landscape and who could potentially meet Texas Tech in the championship to fight for that playoff spot, especially if these two teams could get it done in the rest of their regular season schedule. I think Utah will probably get the job done against the Sun Devils. They're at home. They have a tremendous offense when it's clicking. Texas Tech exposed that a little bit, but their offense is good when it's clicking. And we saw Arizona State falter against Mississippi State. Now we know Mississippi State is a good team, but so is Utah. And I would be very interested to see Utah and Mississippi State play on a neutral field just to gauge where we're at here in terms of level of competition. But I think the Utah edge at home, especially it being a night game as well, a very late game. Give me the Utes here to win this.
So I've seen that Rice-Eccles Stadium is the hardest place to play in the Big 12. First of all, that's not true.
I agree.
When I watched their game where they hosted Texas Tech, I didn't think the stadium looked at all very engaged with the team, and it was a close game till the fourth quarter. So Utah fans, try being there in person instead of just being loud online. But I think this week will be the week
That
they
is bold.
finally get a win in conference play at home. It only took a year and a half, but I think this will be the week. So give me the Utes.
Matt's out for blood. Oh my goodness.
Their fans are annoying.
For
on
the
the
record, I freaking agree. But
Oh, no, I do too. I'm just saying, Matt's
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I'm taking the Utes. Sam Leavitt. It looks like he's doubtful for the game. I don't think he's gonna
Is
play.
he?
Yeah, they updated it when you guys were going on earlier, so he's doubtful now. So who does that leave in charge? Jeff Sims. Oh no, is that the Jeff Sims from when Georgia Tech was bad? Yeah, I don't trust that. Give me the Utes, and probably handedly now.
Yeah, I didn't know Sam Levitt was questionable for that game. That's
right.
that's pertinent
They
information.
are not allowed to change their picks. I'm going Utah simply because of Sam Levitt being out. Arizona State was the best team in my opinion, by far in the Big 12 last year. They played one game without Sam Levitt, and Cincinnati found a way to beat them. So without Sam Levitt, this offense kind of struggles. I'm going to go with Utah, knowing that information. So
All right.
I'm cheating a little bit, not letting y'all go back on your picks, but I'm going to go Utah, even though I was going to go Arizona State. Speaking on the hardest places to play in the Big 12, I feel like it's BYU, right? Got to be.
And
I think
it's
at this
at least
point-
one of them. Yeah, but
B-
BYU is probably it.
BYU, or this might, this is me being biased, but when West Virginia is good, Milan Puskar has to be up there.
I
Gotta
think
be.
so. Very underrated.
If West Virginia is actually a good, solid team consistently, Milan Puskar is at least top 3 in the Big 12. That's a side note. That wraps up the pick'ems for this week. Up to this point, I'm 34-26. Ian is 40-20, 2-to-1 ratio. And Matt is 38-22. Unfortunately, Matt Lombs, I did not have all of your picks and your record labeled
I'm
down.
here for moral support. It's fine.
we love your moral support. Hopefully, I can make up some ground on Ian and Matt Howe, and maybe gain our saneness back a little bit, because West Virginia won't cause us to lose our minds.
I bet we'll win in the bye week.
I don't know. I think we lose. Is there any way we can lose? Like,
We lost Oren Singleton. That's an automatic loss. We lost a player. I don't care if you say his contribution's little. We're down one on the roster spot. That's negative.
how can we lose in the bye week? What would be a loss? I feel like it would have to be one of our quote unquote quality wins loses bad. I guess if BYU gets crushed by Arizona, that would look pretty bad.
Yeah.
How can we win the bye week? We win the bye week if Pitt beats Florida State.
That's true.
I
That's
think we
how we-
win.
That's how
I
we
think-
win the bye week.
I think we win the bye week if we hear Rich Rod on Twitter mention one thing about Hard Edge, because that is a win for the fans.
You know what? If they bring back the inflatable helmet for TCU, that's how we win the bye week.
That'd be
Dude,
awesome.
yeah. The picture behind us has the inflatable helmet coming out of the tunnel. You can see
Indeed.
it right at the bottom. Yeah. So
Indeed it does. All right. That's all for me. I'm sure that's all for Matt Howe. Ian, you want to send us home?
yeah, and we'll send us home. So that is going to do it. That was our last segment. That is going to do it for this episode of the Cold Country Podcast. Before you guys click off, make sure to like the video. It does a lot for us in the algorithm. Subscribe to the channel. Turn on your notifications as well. Follow our Instagram. Follow our X. And don't forget about our Spotify. It's all above our heads here. So make sure you go and follow us on all of that. But that is going to do it for us. So from me, from Tyler, and from Matt and Matt Lombs, we'll see you on the next episode.
Goodbye, America.